lost trying to count now, but the fifth conversation in my What Does Nature Mean to You series, and had some fantastic guests from all sorts of different angles, but very excited tonight to be chatting to you, Ellen, from Nature is a Human Right. I wonder maybe if you could just kind of introduce yourself really and say who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Ellen. I'm the founder of Nature is a Human Right, which is the campaign to make access to nature, to green space, a recognised human right from the top. So looking at petitioning the UN, and then from the ground up as well, working with grassroots organisations and hopefully empowering people to make their communities greener as well. I'm an environmentalist and an activist, and I'm currently developing a social enterprise around community greening, and that's everything you need to know about me.
Well, there's plenty more, but no, that's brilliant. Thank you.
I'm sure you'll find out as this conversation goes.
Exactly. Well, if I kind of just go straight into the questions and see where we go. So the first question really was, what is your earliest memory of connecting to nature?
So all of my childhood memories of connecting to nature all ball into one, which is that there was this amazing island off the coast of Essex where my family used to go for all our holidays. So I'm from Hackney in East London, so we used to just pop along. It was like an hour away over east to this tiny island called Osea, which at the time was this sweet place where different families had homes. We'd all come together. You can only get onto it via a causeway, so when the tide is down and out, which means there's no cars on the island, it's completely secluded, it's completely safe, and unlike most other kids of my generation, we were able to just run around freely and out in the roads and out in the streets and just be without our parents and run around building tree houses, making little traps with pheasants, getting in the ram's den and having to run away, and all of these things that most children from Hackney don't get to do. So unfortunately it's now been privatized, so it's you'll probably know it best as being the island from where Amy Winehouse went to rehab. It's in that film, and now it's in a film starring Jude Law, which is I think by Punch Drunk, which was going to be like this big immersive experience this year. Obviously it's not happening now, but is the most incredible place, and we were able to have a real childhood. And I think it's interesting saying that what we consider to be a real childhood does involve being outdoors, and now that is less and less the case, and just scars on my knees that will never heal from falling off onto the road and of like bikes and stuff. And that was very much where they all sit.
Oh, thank you. It's funny you talk about Osea. Actually, I've only recently discovered that that's a place. Before then it became Jude Law's place. And actually been talking about doing some forest bathing over there as well with the retreat over there, which I'm really excited just to go and see the island. It sounds like a magical place, but I had no idea that's what it was originally. And that sounds quite a unique, as you say, quite a special place to spend so much time as a child. Well, I'll move straight into the next question then. What does nature mean to you? And I'm always adding on to that. Has that changed at all during this particularly unique year?
Yes, it has. I think while my background has been in the environment, it's always been from a more abstract and more, not clinical, but slightly more detached way, the kind of in a intellectual way, knowing that this was the thing to do rather than necessarily feeling it. And I think a lot of the climate conversations we have are driven by quite a masculine perspective, or more of a corporate perspective, I suppose, and looking at numbers and the science, which is really important. But I think that emotions are often left out, or when the emotions are involved, they're emotions of fear and anxiety and anger, that things haven't been sorted out sooner. And so my relationship to nature was one of slight otherness. So I did have that childhood experience, but then when the island got privatized and I got shut down, I was back in London, and I wasn't out in nature as much as I should have been, really. And I think I intuitively would go for a walk to clear my head when I felt like I had to, but I don't think I really made the connection. And now, as with a lot of people, this year has really made me feel emotionally connected to nature, and has opened up that love emotion more and that compassion. And that has reinvigorated my understanding of why we need to fight the climate crisis and why climate justice is so pressing, because it's coming from a place of love. I know that sounds really cheesy, and I do think this is really important. I think it's a climate solution that we are overlooking as a culture. I think if we were to help people to really connect to nature more, and it's been shown that the more that you connect to nature, the more people care about the environment, and the more people will recycle or cycle or join green action groups and act in environmentally conscious ways. And so my connection to nature has been one of more of developing a real relationship and not otherizing nature as well. I think I always thought nature as a solution slightly. When I did go to nature, I kind of went to it and expected to be made to feel better. Whereas now I'm kind of more able to spend time in nature without necessarily demanding anything of it, or just able to appreciate it more. That's a really rambling answer. I'm sorry. I hope that's
no, it's lovely. No, it's fantastic, and I fully encourage rambling. It's lovely. But no, and it's something that definitely resonates for me, and something that I have tried to invite contemplation on in a forest bathing session, of our connection in both ways to nature, and talking about that love or that compassion, and when we connect, we are then moved to protect. But it's interesting, as you say, that then perhaps it's this year and the unfortunate circumstances that have perhaps then emphasized that for you and potentially many others. But then I wonder how that also connects with the work that you do. So talking about people's access to nature, because I'm very aware, we're talking about that and the importance of that. And I remember talking about this also when you came and joined me on a forest bathing session, that of course it's all very well and good saying, well, get out to nature, it's good for you, and connect, protect, and all that, but how many people don't have access to that, and how unaware maybe some of us are what issues there are.
Yeah, I think not everyone gets to have the privilege of a relationship with nature, and I think that's obviously something I've been championing a lot, and part of the way that I'm doing that is helping people to actually increase the nature in that area, to be hands-on and not to, we always talk about relationships with nature, and I think when we do that, we tend to mean how do we feel in nature, what does nature give us, like, is our relationship one where being in nature makes us feel whole and all of these things. But actually a relationship, or a good relationship, if we think about it in the wider sense, is reciprocal. And so your relationship to nature shouldn't just be how do you feel when you're in nature, it should be what do you do for nature too. And I think that's how you also build more of an actual understanding and more of a kind of symbiotic understanding and more of a conversation or a dialogue with nature, obviously not in a language that we can kind of formally understand, but there is more of a two-way understanding in that sense. And so I'm trying to empower people to take greening into their own hands so that people actually can develop a relationship with a patch of plants that they've grown or something they're taking care of in their area, rather than just shipping people out to a park and saying, like, look at this tree, 5 minutes, how do you feel now? But helping people to day to day incorporate these things into what they're doing, and to have something they can own and they can love and protect and actually nourish themselves rather than just being nourished by nature.
Yeah, there's something about and it resonates with what someone else was saying about having that daily perhaps connection, or that regular connection, and it not having to be necessarily a 3-hour forest bathing experience. It can be a 5 minutes watering a plant, planting a seed, tending to the earth, as I guess we perhaps would have naturally done in different environments. But there was I remember you talking about a little bit to do with, I suppose, sort of stats and numbers of how many people don't have access to green space. That I remember surprised me, the percentage, and I wondered if you could share any of that with us.
Yeah, so in England alone, 11 million people are nature deprived, and 2.7 million people in the UK don't live within 10 minutes walking radius of any green space. So they're at the epicenter where in 10 minutes in every direction minimum there is no green space they can access. On top of that, so 1 in 8 UK households don't have a garden, and obviously those numbers shoot up for BME communities, for lower income communities, which are the communities that are more likely to be in public areas where there is less funding for green space. So it's all quite worrying, especially when you think about the negative impacts of nature deprivation on our health, significant impacts on our physical health. Every corner of the body is negatively impacted, like our lungs, our health, our heart. Lots of coronavirus comorbidities are fueled by nature deprivation, not exclusively, but it does make them worse. And social health as well. So there's more crime, there's more domestic violence, there's more interpersonal conflicts in areas with less trees. And the fact that you can put these figures against millions of people in the country and across the nation having to suffer this day by day and not having this relationship with nature, like, you know, not even having nature around, let alone having the upper echelons of like having a spiritual connection to it. It's very, I mean, unnatural in the most literal sense.
Yes, yeah, I mean, I always say it, and I've probably said it in some of these chapter 4, if they're looking at that scale of evolution and how long we as human beings were existing in natural environments versus the very tiny bit of our evolution that we're suddenly in houses and cities and built up areas, and we're not designed to be in that area. But so what can we do? Because you talked a little bit about what you do, and normally my third question in these chats is, what advice would you give people? And I guess that could have been general for, you know, connecting to nature or general advice, but specifically connected with what you were saying, what can people do, and how do we make that change? It's a big question.
It's a good question. So I am really passionate about and excited by the idea of community-led greening. So the more I talk to policymakers and people in local authorities and councils, the more I realise, and having worked in a council earlier this year, the more I realise it's hard to get things done. There is limited resources, there's limited budgets, there's lots of red tape that makes it scary or difficult for people in councils to make a big change, because say you plant a tree somewhere, someone's going to come along and say, that's a trip hazard, or that's my way. It's really hard. There's lots of people, busybodies kind of working against the council doing the right thing. So it's either very slow or it doesn't happen at all. Or when it does happen, it can be a bit of an ivory tower solution where actually it's not what the community really needs. It's not really tapping into the local wants and desires and cultural nuances. So I think the solution to this is to take greening action into our own hands. And this means lots of things, but a good starting point is what people call guerrilla gardening, which is essentially going out into public land and growing stuff. So finding bare and neglected and sad grey patches of soil which are going to waste as perfectly good opportunities for planting, and planting in them. So I actually went and did some today. I planted a bunch of spring bulbs in this old neglected plant that was just overrun with weeds and glass and cigarette butts, with another woman from my local guerrilla gardening group that I've started. And I'm actually trying to build more awareness of this, because people don't know it's possible, or people don't know where to start, and I think it's really difficult, and I think it requires lots of time and lots of skills, and it doesn't. I know nothing about gardening, honestly. I'm trying to start this like guerrilla gardening movement. I don't know, I'm rubbish at gardening, and I can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Like, you can do it. It's so easy. I'm creating this booklet of how to get started with some inspiration ideas, with just basic steps, a checklist of, you know, find your site, think about what plants you'll use, think about what tools you need and how you're going to get them. Can you crowdfund it? What can you borrow? You know, keeping the cost down, making it easy for you. And then obviously now we're in lockdown, so you can't be up in more than a pair, but how can you get people around you to kind of come and help you to make it easy? And when you break it down like that, it's so simple. And I put a message out on Nextdoor, which is a website I've only recently heard about, which is a really nice community network. It essentially just exists to connect you to community-minded neighbours, and I put a message out saying I was going to do some of this, and the response I got was phenomenal. It was beyond what I was expecting. I've got 30 people sign up to a WhatsApp group in no time at all. Everyone's posting pictures of things they want to do, places they want to green. It's incredible. And it's something I would encourage anyone to do. And it's a good way to remember that you do have power and you can make a difference. You don't just need to wait for the powers that be to like send the blessing from above. And you can do it. And honestly, you can do it. It's like really, it's possible. So if anyone is watching this and they do want to see that booklet or get in touch to ask anything, just DM me. I'll so give you all my not wisdom, just straight up, frank. This is it. It's easy.
Oh, thank you. That's brilliant. I mean, that was my next question. What can people do, or how can they get in touch with you and find out more? So, yeah, I guess following you on Instagram, DMing you, and then sort of taking it from there.
Yeah, exactly. Do all those things. I wrote this down earlier, which I was going to mention when we talked about nature, but I actually kind of want to just read out. So there's a new book by Rebecca Tamas, which is coming out. It's called Stranger, which is about humans and the non-human, but like basically our relationships with different ecosystems. And there was a review of it yesterday in It's Freezing in LA, the Climate magazine, which basically said being in nature can be boring, and that's okay. You're not always going to have an epiphany in nature. And I feel like there is always this pressure when we go into nature to have this spiritual, religious awakening, and that, you know, if we fail to do that, we failed. And there was just this one line in the review which I thought was just apt. So some proponents of nature writing would have you believe that the natural world is a source of relentless, ecstatic revelation. And it's not, and that's okay. You don't have to go and like reach nirvana when you go and like go for a walk. It's okay. You know, it's our natural state. We should just be in that state, and you're going to have different responses to that on different days, and it's good to just go out and do it regardless, and don't feel like you failed or feel like it failed you if that doesn't happen.
I love that. I always try at the beginning of my sessions, and I don't know how successful that always is for people, but I always try to sort of say there's no definitely goal or objective in this session. I mean, yes, obviously forest bathing is a particular act and an act of mindfulness and well-being and essentially that, but it doesn't mean that you have to come out with a spiritual epiphany necessarily. It might just be that was nice. and try to let people know that all of those experiences, whatever they are valid and okay, because as you said, it can be boring, and sometimes being bored is actually quite nice, and I think we forget that as well, don't we, in these day and ages.
You know, and it's good to keep trying anyway. It's not gonna, I think I'm kind of the same with meditation. I just give up too soon because I think I can't do this. But it's the same with just like going to hang in nature, even if you don't feel like you've smashed it. Go, it's good for you. You will be feeling good inside, even if you don't realize it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Ellen. I feel like there's so much more that I could chat to, but I'm trying to keep these little chats sort of fairly succinct. So, and thank you even more for hosting because of whatever was happening on Instagram earlier. So thank you. I normally sort of wrap it up around here, but is there anything else that you wanted to add or share before I do?
Wow. Oh, the floor is open. I always need to prepare. I was just going to take the questions so they don't think about them. Is there anything to add? Yes, obviously, if you're watching this, follow Nature as a Human Right. Go to the link in my bio and sign the petition to the United Nations. And other than that, have a lovely evening. Remember to go outside tomorrow and wear a mask.
Lovely. Thank you.